Computer. Okay. There we are. We're good.
All
How are
right.
you?
Hello, it's great to see you.
Nice.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, I am thrilled to have you. Just in case there's anyone who hasn't watched our podcast before, I'm Melissa McLeod. I'm at the Wool and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And I am one half of the Pointing It Out team, along with my buddy Megan Holmes at the Needlepoint Clubhouse in St. Louis. And we get together and bring together fabulous people, like today with Ellen Johnson, who is, I don't even know how many hats you wear. I can't keep up, but author, teacher, blog writer, former store owner. I
Oh,
don't know, probably an awesome family person as well, but we're going to learn a little bit about that. So tell us about yourself, my dear.
all righty. Well, I am Ellen Johnson. I live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This is the only place I ever remember living. So we landed here from Mississippi. My family is originally from Mississippi. And so we ended up in Tuscaloosa because my father was a professor at the University of Alabama
Ah,
for 35 years, I think. And
wow.
so, yeah, and so that's where I went to school. And I never left because my husband's family is from Tuscaloosa, and we actually met here over Christmas break one year. And then he was working. He's several years older than me, and he was working in South Alabama. And we met, fell in love, and he got a job back here in Tuscaloosa. So I've never gone anywhere.
Oh, that's
But
okay.
so
Your
yeah,
roots
so
run deep.
I love Tuscaloosa. It's a great place to live. We have all the wonderful amenities of a larger city because we have the University of Alabama here, and but yet we still have a small town feel. So it's really a great place to live. Yeah, I grew up going to Mississippi to visit grandmothers. One lived in Tupelo and the other lived on the Gulf Coast. Both were really amazing needle workers. One was more of a seamstress. My mother's mother was more of a seamstress. And then she also taught me to crochet. And my other grandmother, who lived on the coast, my dad's mother, is the one who actually taught me how to do embroidery first and then needlepoint. And so I'm a product of my grandmother's tutelage.
Uh,
So
and so did your mom do anything?
my mom does beautiful embroidery, but her hobby is genealogy. She doesn't care for doing any type of needlework. So it skipped a generation.
I
So,
think that happens quite a bit. We talk about that in the shop quite
yep.
often. I have a lot of my staff members are like, oh, like my mom really wanted me to knit and now I'm a needle pointer or, whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I have a daughter as well, and she's a knitter. She picked up knitting when I had the shop, and she's tried needlepoint, but it's just not her thing. So
Yeah.
I
I
discovered I actually have had two brick and mortar stores in my
oh,
lifetime. Back in 1991, I guess it was, when Rebecca was in elementary school. I was a partner in a smocking and heirloom sewing store.
oh, how
So for those of
fun.
you who aren't familiar with that, it's the little smocked dresses. If you are a royal watcher, you'll see a lot of little smocked dresses on Princess Charlotte. And at that time, Prince William and Prince Harry were both, young, and so it was a real big deal. So anyway, like I said, I was a partner in that shop for 5 years, and it wasn't. It let's just say partnerships sometimes don't turn out like you hoped they would, and so I decided to leave that particular shop and pursued doing some freelance design work in embroidery, because that's actually where I started on this, I guess you'd say, on this path to Serendipity Needleworks. I was doing the embroidery and had a column in a couple of magazines that were related to that industry, Creative Needle and So Beautiful. And so I wrote for them, and then also designed a line of patterns embroidery patterns that I sold wholesale to needlework shops around the country.
Can
And
I
so,
can I interrupt though and ask
yeah,
you
sure.
what was your degree in at Alabama?
Okay, so my background is in education. I have a bachelor's and a master's in early childhood education. Grew up in a home with teachers, and my mom taught fourth grade, and then of course my dad was a professor at the University of Alabama. So that was really teaching is in my blood, I guess you could
Okay.
say.
And I was trying to figure out if maybe like you had an English degree and that's where the writing first came from, or, so
Yeah,
that's
no, but I
besides.
do love to write. So that's a really good question. I've always enjoyed writing, and I thought, well, because I was doing these articles for these different magazines, I thought, well, it's actually really quite funny. I woke up on January 1st, 1999. I will never forget this. Woke up with this just overwhelming feeling that my purpose at that point in my life was to create a line of embroidery patterns. So I pursued that. I've continued to do the freelance writing to sort of supplement my income, but then I did these embroidery patterns and had videos back on VCR, the videotapes, the cassettes.
The ancient times.
Yes, ancient times, how to do a basic embroidery stitches. And so anyway, been sort of in the online space from a very long time ago, now that I think about it. And I had a website when you had DSL, or it was dial up. I guess it was dial up internet,
You plug the phone in.
Yeah. So it goes
New
way
needlepointers
back
out there that don't even know what we're talking about.
Oh, I know. You're so right. But yeah, so anyway, landed sort of haphazardly back into the retail space when I was going to buy thread for a project that I was doing for one of my patterns at the local needlework shop. And the lady there asked me if I was interested in taking over the needlepoint in Tuscaloosa. She was ready to retire. And I said, I thought to myself, not no, but no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say an ugly word, but let's say heck no. And so anyway, I told her, let me think about it. And so I went home and I thought about it a little bit, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought, the thing that I miss the most about retail is the people.
No,
The thing I don't like the most about what I do is the isolation. And because working at home by yourself is very solitary. Rebecca was in school all day. So, I was just, I was working by myself with the cat. And so I decided that I think I might just give it a try. I talked to Rick about it and he said, well, yeah, if you want to go for it. So I did. And then, the rest is history. I had a brick and mortar store here in Tuscaloosa that it started out primarily as Needlepoint, but that was in 2003. And that was at the height of the I guess you would call it the renaissance of knitting. People were, there was a huge knitting boom. I mean, you ordered knitting needles from 5 different companies, hoping that you would get delivery from one, because there was such a shortage of product. So anyway, I started in needlepoint and then added knitting. And I would say by the end of 2004, we were probably half and half. We had half knitting and half needlepoint. So
my old store owner was half knitting and half needlepoint, and so am I as well.
Mhm.
But she would tell me stories about in 2001,
Mhm.
how like that there'd practically be lines out the door. Like she
Oh,
could not keep up. And so it's really interesting because I look at this now, like 2001, we had obviously a horrible, tragic situation happen in our world and our country. And the knitting just exploded,
yeah.
which is probably a bad use of that word considering what I'm talking about. But, and now it's 2019, 2020, 2021, or I should say 2020, 2021. And the needlepoint has exploded and knitting has not exploded as much. So it's interesting how these two different situations had such a different impact.
Absolutely. And that's a really interesting point. I had not thought about that. The analogy between the two. And I think what we see so many times is that the interest in different forms of needlework tends to be cyclical. So I guess you could honestly say that it was needlepoint's turn.
Right,
Needlepoint has
exactly.
really had knitting and crochet have just been at the forefront of the craft industry for several years. But the interest that is being generated in needlepoint, I can attribute it to there's so many young people who are picking up needlepoint again, and they are so social media savvy, which is tremendously helpful for our cause, I guess you could say, because they're putting it out there, making it more visible for the rest of the world to see that needlepoint is not just stuffing holes with yarn. I remember there was a lady that was, when I announced, because I had an embroidery studio that I flipped into the Needlepoint store. And when I mentioned to my students that I was going to be doing this, that's exactly what she said to me. She said, well, I will no longer be a student because needlepoint is nothing but stuffing holes with yarn. And that has stuck in my brain for all these years. And I wish so many times now, I don't know that I'd know her if I passed her on the street now, but you know, it just makes me so sad for people to think that all you do when you do needlepoint is simply the 10th stitch. Now, granted, there is nothing in the world wrong with doing just the 10th
Some
stitch
days
because
that's
it's
just what you need.
tremendously relaxing. I love 10th stitch, but you know, there are just so many other things that you can do with needlepoint, canvas embroidery stitches that you can use to embellish your canvases that really turn those painted canvases into three-dimensional pieces of fiber art.
Well, and I
So
think a lot of the newer stitchers too don't realize that a lot of the things they're learning have their basis in embroidery. And
true.
so you come to it with such a different worldview of the craft industry, I guess, that is really refreshing.
Yeah, well, I truly enjoy what I do, and I could literally talk about this all day. So you're going to have to rein me in because I will literally talk your ears off.
Well, I have conversations with people that watch the podcast all the time. They're like, it's just so fun. I'm like, well, that's because usually our husbands, sometimes our best friends, whoever, don't care about what we care about. And so it's really fun to get together with people that have this passion and this love of this industry and this craft and this hobby and this art. You know, it can be called any one of those things. And it's really nice. And it's a great escape from our real world right now. You know, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, as much as we all don't want to admit it, we still are. And so it's really nice to escape from it. I usually don't even bring it up because I just don't even want to pretend it's out there when I'm in this little cocoon. So
Yeah.
and I'm going to back up for 1 second because I don't want anyone who's a knitter to think that I'm saying that knitting is dying. I am not. Our knitting has stayed stable. Our needlepoint has just had a huge spike.
Right.
So,
Right.
and maybe for some knitting stores, they've managed it better than I have, and their knitting is spiking. I don't know. So God bless them if they are. And I love all my knitters, and we have gorgeous yarn here and all that good stuff. But we're not here to talk about yarn. I just don't want anyone to think that I'm saying anything negative about knitting because I'm a knitter too. So
Oh yeah. Oh, me too. Me too. In fact, that when I closed my store, I brought home just lots and lots and lots of yarn that I thought, you know, I never had a chance to knit this when I was being a store owner. I'm going to take it home. So now I have I guess you could call it I won't say lifelong because I don't know how long it would take me to knit it up, but quite a few years worth of yarn stashed away so that I can work on those kinds of projects too. So
right. So your store, so you bought your store from a prior owner. Was it called Serendipity Needleworks?
actually it wasn't. And I should say I learned from my first experience as a shop owner not to buy a store lock, stock, and barrel. Because we actually, in the first case, bought some of our the previous owner's mistakes.
Yes,
So
yes.
I decided that when I did the second retail store that I would purchase what I wanted to purchase,
Right.
and that, you know, then I would be very specific about what I was willing to take. And then so what happened was I bought some of the merchandise that she had and then went to my first market in June, which is where my eyes were opened to the wonderful world of decorative stitches, using decorative stitches to embellish canvases. At that point in my life, I only thought that you did tent stitch. You know, I thought I knew everything there was to know about needlepoint, but
Right.
oh, Nellie, did I not? So
Interesting,
yeah.
because I figured with your embroidery, you were one of the first to be putting it onto needlepoint, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you knew this, but you didn't marry them
That's
together.
exactly right. I did a lot of work with embroidery. And then, you know, I did needlepoint as a hobby. I used to do a lot of counted cross stitch. And for those people who follow me on Instagram, no, was it Facebook? It was on Facebook that I posted several of my counted cross stitch ornaments that I did back when Rick and I first married. Our very first Christmas tree, I did all these little counted cross stitch ornaments. But when I discovered painted canvas, it was like, whoop, no more counted cross stitch, because I wanted to be able to do, you know, I loved the painted canvas concept. I didn't have to count and transfer. It was so much easier and so much more relaxing to me. But
Yes.
then, like you said, when I discovered or put the two together, the fact that you could actually take the surface embroidery stitches and the canvas embroidery stitches and put them onto a painted canvas, use your imagination as your only limitation. Wow. I mean, it was just amazing. So, it's been so much fun to learn all the different things that I've learned over the course of the past, I would say now at this point, 18 years. I can't believe it. So, yeah.
So, and we keep digressing because I think this is so interesting. So you bought your store, you changed the name, you bought part of the thing, you went to your first market, you were probably like a deer in headlights like I
Oh,
was at my first market. I remember driving home in the car. I took one of the gals who'd worked here for 15 years and I was like, okay, and this is a silly thing, but I know you'll relate to this. When you go to market, you don't get a receipt at every booth you go to.
no.
And I come from a financial background. Okay. So I'm making agreements to order and to order to order. And all of a sudden I'm in the car and I'm with Kirsty, who's worked here for years. And I'm like, okay, get out a piece of paper. We have to start adding up what I just spent. Like I was literally having a heart attack
Yep.
because it was not how I function. I'm a numbers girl. I do everything by the numbers, but in that environment, the way it was then, it just wasn't what you could do. You just had to kind of wing it a little bit, which is not my personality.
Mm.
So yeah, I remember just having a complete heart attack. So now, we go to market and I'm much calmer. But that first market is so just such a whirlwind of fun and joy, but a little bit of stress too.
Yeah, it is. And at that point, when I went the first time, I was just buying for needlepoint because I didn't have knitting then. So
Right,
I
right.
remember Shea Pendray had a shop at one point in
Right near
somewhere up.
me.
Yeah,
Right
I
near
think it
me.
was.
She's
And
actually been to my store. She's
oh my
like it's
goodness.
a celebrity. When she walks in, we're like, oh my gosh, she's here, she's here.
Oh, she's amazing. I remember we were standing outside the doors of waiting for them to open up to us. And this was, the knitting was just really experiencing lots of interest and renewal and interest. And she asked me, she said, did you buy those little purse kits? And I said, no, but I looked at them. There was this one booth that had these little kits that you could use to make these really fun, whimsical purses. And I said, no, I didn't. Did you? And she said, yeah, because they had like $100 minimum opening order and it was like 10 kits. She said, I can sell 10 kits. And I thought, well, being a neophyte shop owner, I thought if Shea Pendray thinks that's a good idea, I think I'm going to do that too. So I went and bought 10 kits.
And these are needlepoint kits.
No, these are knitting kits
Knitting
now.
kits. Okay.
So I had bought all these things for needlepoint for all my stitchers, and then went down this one little side track and bought these 10 kits, got them in, they came in. And at that point, that's when I realized you have to have needles. You have to have the fun, fancy yarn to go with these kits to make them look so fun and whimsical. And so I thought, well, okay. So I called at that point Plymouth Yarn Company because I didn't know who else to call. They sent a rep. We got started with a small opening order and then it just exploded after that. But all that to say too, at that same market, I bought my very first canvases that I used in a class to teach people how to embellish canvases with decorative stitches. It was a Whimsy and Grace pumpkin. And so I bought that. And I said, okay, so I'm going to have to teach myself how to do this. So I had the stitch guide. It came with a written stitch guide. And I came back to Tuscaloosa and worked on that project, set up a class, had 4 people in the class, and we stitched it basically together. And I was really learning as I was teaching them. Because I had a background in education and also because I had the advantage of having done needlework for so long and done so much in embroidery. I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. And so I went through and taught them section by, because it was each canvas had, or each section of the pumpkin was a different stitch. So we did a different section, and it was, that was my first experience with actually following a stitch guide, and B, teaching people how to do decorative stitches to embellish a painted canvas.
And I think we had Tony on the podcast a little while ago, unfortunately, right after her tragic situation of her house burning to the ground. And I'm sure most of our listeners, and I know you are well aware that a number of us shop owners did a group trunk show for her, a virtual trunk show. And I believe that piece is still in her line.
She is such an amazing person, such a
Yes.
sweet, sweet person that that was a heartbreaking situation. And I'm so, so grateful that the Needlepoint community rallied to
Oh,
her,
yeah.
to help her. And
Well, her life attitude is so amazing.
oh,
We all can
yes,
learn so much more from her that has nothing to do with needlepoint.
yes, she is a jewel of a human being.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, for sure. So that was your first foray, and now so now you're a shop owner, you're doing some teaching, but you're kind of following other people's instructions. And where do we go from there?
Absolutely. So yeah, so during this time, I'm beginning to think, start out with me thinking I know everything there is to know about needlepoint, finding out in the most in your face way that I didn't. And then deciding my stitchers need to know how to do this. I want to know how to do this. This is the most gorgeous stuff I've ever seen in my life. So I decided at that point to try and learn all I could. So I took classes at Market. I started having guest teachers come to my shop. I
Mhm.
bought as many canvases as I could that had stitch guides. And so, it was this process of self-education. I mentioned, that I have a background in education. I grew up in an atmosphere where lifetime learning is truly, I would say, one of my core values. I'm constantly trying to learn new things. I'm constantly trying to improve myself as a human being, and also my knowledge, to gain more knowledge, to expand my knowledge, and to become more knowledgeable about lots of different things so that I can share that with others. Because one of my other, I guess you would say, core values is that it's so, so important to me for people to understand that while they may think they're not creative, they really are. Everybody is a creative soul. You just express it in your own unique way.
Right, right.
And I also think that, needlepoint, needlework in general is such a valuable way to express your creativity, because it is so, basically wide open. You can do whatever appeals to you. It's your art. You can make it look however you want to make it look. And there is no right and wrong in needlepoint. There are a few techniques, a few ways to do things that are considered technically correct, yes. But once you get the technical part of how to actually execute the stitches down, then the way you combine them is really up to you. So the artistic side of it is something that appeals to me in a really big way. But I also think that it's such a wonderful hobby, and something that you can do for your entire life. I'm an example. I learned when I was quite young. I learned embroidery when I was 7, and I learned needlepoint when I was 9. And here I am at 57,
Right.
still practicing that hobby. So it's been a lifelong hobby, and it will continue, hopefully, for many, many more years. And also, needlework has such a rich heritage in our culture. There are so many beautiful pieces of fiber art, tapestries, and all kinds of things. I saw when we're so fortunate to be able to visit France 2 years ago, the beautiful tapestries that were hanging in the castles, and we didn't see but just a mere smattering of those, and we didn't have time because we were with a group. I didn't get to see nearly the things that I would have loved to have seen. But the ecclesiastical linens that go way back into the history of our churches, and just so many things that are just yeah, I don't want to see that die. I want to see it be, continue to thrive. And I want people to continue to, what I say, sort of a catchphrase, is to discover the joy of needlework, because it truly is something that can bring you so much joy, and it brings joy to others as well. Because when you share something that you've created yourself, you're giving someone a piece of your heart, I think.
For
So,
sure. Well, that has been certainly a silver lining of this era we are in. Is I have had so many people who have started needlepoint. It was discussed, but so many people who were like, I started this project back in 1980, and they're getting it out of their closet, and then they've caught the bug again.
yep,
So it's really
absolutely.
our lives have been forced to slow down. So therefore, they've been able to find some of these things that are anxiety reducing and relaxing, and
Absolutely.
Keep all of us a little calmer and keep our hands busy and hopefully our minds calmer. So that's
Yeah, I agree. And I was so as a shop owner, I was incredibly fortunate to be in a situation where I was able to invite guest teachers to come into my store. So not only did I have the benefit of learning from people at market, but I also had the advantage of being able to invite guest teachers to come and teach. And of course, I learned vicariously through my students that, or through my customers who were there as students.
right.
And there were a couple of times that I was able to sit down and actually take the class myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's super fun to be able to do too, because I always say, you know, I have a way of teaching. Patricia Sohn has a way of teaching. Julia Snyder has a way of teaching. Everybody has their own personality and their own way of teaching things. And there may be some person that's been trying to learn to do a particular type of thing, and they've taken a class from 4 or 5 different people, and then all of a sudden the fifth or sixth person they take it from, the way that person says it makes it click.
I will never forget the fact, I can't even tell you how many people tried to teach me how to do a colonial knot. I don't know why that wouldn't stick. I could do a French knot, left, right, sideways, whatever. Could not do a colonial knot. And I went to a class with Robin King about 7 years ago, and she's the one who finally was able to like make the pieces go together for me, which it's not that hard. But I have those things with every teacher, like she's who taught me that, she's who taught me that.
Absolutely. And, that's one thing I think that has been to my advantage, is that because my background is in education, and particularly early childhood education, I taught first grade for a couple of years before I had Rebecca, and then stayed home with her when she was, before she started school.
Right.
And so I think that helps me break things down into small, easy to understand steps.
Right.
And also my education background helps me to be able to reach out to people based on their unique learning style, because there are different ways that people learn. And so having that background in education has been tremendously helpful in enabling me to help people learn in the way which best suits them.
So we haven't really gotten to current day yet. So you had your store until what year?
Yeah, I'm sorry, till 2000.
No,
I told you I
keep
could talk
interrupting
about
and
this
asking
stuff.
questions. I know.
So 2017. So fast forward to 2017, actually January 20th, 2017. I was getting ready to do inventory, as I know we've spoken about before. And
that'll settle it right there.
yeah, there you go. Actually, what happened was we had a point of sale system, and we had ordered these barcode readers. And so we were getting ready to start doing the barcode, scanning the barcodes to do our inventory. And there was we had to paper the windows, because literally I love my customers. And we had to cover the windows with paper though, because if we didn't, they would come and stand at the door and look at us with these sad eyes, like, please, I just need one skein of something,
Yes.
So we ended up covering the windows and doors with paper. And there was this knock on the door, and I thought, oh goodness. So I went, and it was my husband's business partner. And he said, Grant's, a sweet, sweet soul. And I could tell something was wrong. And he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, and nothing, right over my head. I thought, what's, come to find out, my husband had what's called a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is a brain hemorrhage.
Okay.
And he was en route from Greene County, which is about 45 minutes from here, to our local hospital. And at that point, they didn't know what was wrong. He was just having a terrific headache, and had actually, well, I won't go into all the details, but anyway, was being transferred to Tuscaloosa to the hospital. And so Grant was coming to tell me that I needed to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, left Rebecca, our daughter, and my mother, and I'm sure totally freaked them out. But anyway, went to the hospital, and when I got there, they thought that he had an aneurysm, and didn't know just exactly, weren't able to do a whole lot with it, because we don't have the facilities here in Tuscaloosa to handle something like that. Okay. So they were doing all these CAT scans and all this kind of stuff. And finally the ER doctor said, we can't treat this here. They had called in a neurologist and he said, I don't fix aneurysms. You know, you've got to go to Birmingham. Well, it turns out Birmingham, which is where UAB is located, was on what they call diversion. And so that meant they weren't taking any patients. So they got a helicopter and brought it in and air vaced him over to, or medevaced or whatever you call it, over to Jackson, Mississippi. And so, yeah, talk about having your world turned upside down in like 5 minutes. And so it was, he was helicoptered over there. In the meantime, all this had been, you know, in the background. I had told my 2 employees that were helping me with inventory what was going on. So they said, don't worry about it. We'll do inventory. And, you know, you go. So Rebecca and I went, yeah, by this point I had to tell my mom and Rebecca what was happening. And so Rebecca and I drove over to Jackson, and he was there in the hospital for 4 days, I think. But the first night he was in what was it called? The neuro ICU, which is the neurological intensive care unit.
Yeah.
And you can't go, at least the policy at Jackson at University of Mississippi Medical Center was that if you go into the ICU unit with the patient, you cannot go to sleep. You have to stay awake. And so, yeah, they had a place for you to go sleep out. They had like a little sleeping porch outside in the waiting area, but it was like, no, I'm not going there. I'm staying here. So I stayed there and just remember watching that machine, you know, all night long. And Rick and I've been married since I was 19. So I was, you know, he's 6 years older than me. So anyway, this was like literally just, like I said, turn your world upside down. Touch and go for several days and not sure what was going to happen. But anyway, he began to recover. They ended up not having to do surgery, which was quite fortunate. And so we weren't sure if he was going to, how he was going to respond, or how he was going to, what the final outcome was going to be, because they told us when we got there, they told me when we got there, that 1/3 of the people that have this happen die. The second third of the people that have it are severely disabled for the rest of their lives. And then the other third of the people survive. And I was like, okay. So you can imagine, you know, all the things that are going through my head at this point. And thankfully, he made it through and has no lasting, you know, really no lasting side effects from it, other than the occasional really bad headache. They call them thunderclap headaches. And it's really rare that when they come along, you know, they come out of nowhere. You know, we haven't been able to pinpoint any rhyme or reason as to why they happen, but you know, they're fewer in frequency and continuing to become fewer in frequency, but still, you know, so at the end of, so I would say by the end of February, you know, we're still not sure, you know, where our life is going to be, and trying to manage all of the things. I just decided that, you know, I think it's time, after having been fully committed to, you know, to doing a retail store. Our daughter had just gotten married in August of 2016 and was getting ready to move to another town. And my mother was not getting any younger, and I'm an only child, and she lives here. So, you know, I'm responsible for helping her with the things she needs help with. And then Rick was having some issues. So I just said,
a lot on your shoulders.
Yeah. So I just said, you know, I think it's time to shut this door and just kind of maybe cut back on things for a while. So that's what I did. And by the time, so I set a date of end of May 2017. By the time end of May 2017 got here, Rick was continuing to improve. So I took the summer and really just kind of relaxed and had a good time, and began to think about, because actually I had done in the last year of my business, had done some subscription type things with different threads and projects and stuff like that. And I thought, well, you know, I did that sort of online. Wonder what I could do online with, you know, because I'm not really ready to completely retire. I still love doing what I do. And it's evident that Rick isn't going to need me like perhaps I thought he would when I made the decision.
Right.
So what can I do? So I began to look around at some different possibilities and play around with some different ideas. And I had actually done some, I had a membership site before, when I had my brick and mortar store, where people would have a place to go and watch videos on how to do particular stitches that pertained to those projects. And so that sort of resurfaced, and I began to think, well, I wonder if there is an interest in that sort of thing. So I started a blog. I kept the Serendipity Needleworks name. I didn't want to sell the business. I didn't want to sell the name. I didn't want to sell the mailing list and all that, because I thought, well, if I ever want to do anything with this in the future, then if I do that, then I'd be starting all over from scratch. So I closed it. I didn't even put the store up for sale. And so anyway, decided that, I've got this list of people who, might be interested in doing something with knitting or needlepoint. I don't know. We'll see. And so through a series of, I guess of events, I started the blog. I started doing a little bit with social media and discovered that, there was indeed a group of people who lived in a place where there wasn't a local needlework shop, who were
Right.
quite interested in learning more. And so it really opened up the door to me being able to fall back on my education background and begin to teach people who lived in places where there wasn't a local shop. So
How perfectly suited that was for what you, of course, had no idea what happened in 2020, but
yeah, absolutely. And, I laughingly say now, how serendipitous was all of that, that I decided to keep the business name, and so things have just really, I guess you would say, I shouldn't say snowball, but things have really just picked up momentum from that, first year. When I first started this, I launched the Stitchers Club with 35 founding members, and now we have 336. So it's crazy,
so
and I'm
explain to people what the Stitchers Club actually is.
all right. So the Stitchers Club is what I like to call my online resource center for all things needlepoint. Um, I have an online course also called Needlepoint Made Easy. And so in Needlepoint Made Easy, I teach people the basics of needlepoint, what I call the fundamentals or the foundations of needlepoint. And then after you've gone through that, if you're interested in continuing to work with me, then you have the opportunity to join the Stitchers Club. The Stitchers Club is a place for people. It's a community. It's really an online community. And so what we do there is I teach things that have to do with using decorative stitches on your canvas. I have different kinds of things are released, different types of content are released over the course of a month. I share new stitches. I share technique videos on how to do different techniques like beading, and we've done some on silk ribbon. We have some things coming up where I'm going to be teaching some black work, some stump work. And so just really, it's almost like classes for needlepoint online without the store to back it up, so I teach you based on what you want to learn. You can pick and choose, I hesitate to call it Netflix for needlepoint, but it's kind of like that. It's really a place for people to meet other people who love to do needlepoint as much as they do. And it's also a place for you to expand your needlepoint skills, to develop your skills to become a more confident stitcher, because that to me is a large part of it, is to build your confidence so that you do have the confidence to choose the best stitches and threads for your projects. So we go through what I call my needlepoint stitch guide formula. I teach people the steps that I use to write a stitch guide for a project, and it's actually based in art theory. So I use the elements of art and the principles of design to teach people how to evaluate a needlepoint canvas, and then different ways that they can use the different, actually the elements of art and the principles of design both, to add movement and texture and perspective and all of those things to their canvases using decorative stitches and novelty threads and basic threads as well.
So
So
you're kind of talking about like theoretically how you approach a canvas, and then the logistics of certain stitches. You're not necessarily talking about, you know, the poi brick and this is what I'd put on that piece, because everyone's just learning how to take those things and use them on their own personal projects.
that's exactly right. Now, I do have a class that I'm going to be teaching in February. It's my Lavender Fields class. It's already full, but what I'll be doing, it's actually this, it's a Maggie canvas. I brought it downstairs. Let me see if you can see
Pretty.
it. I love this canvas. And so we're going to be, I'm going to be teaching that piece in February, and I'll be using that. The people that'll be in that class will also have the benefit of learning, okay, why did I choose this stitch for this space? You know, what is the, because that's really what I teach inside of the Stitchers Club is you can use, there are a variety of different stitches that you can use for different design components. So yes, there are, I don't know, 47 stitches you can use for sky. There are, you know, but which one is going to be the best one for your particular piece, you know, and so that's what we get into inside of the Stitchers Club. The Needlepoint Made Easy course is the foundations that get you to, you know, like how to anchor your thread, what, you know, all that, just the basic stuff that you need to know. And then we take it a step further inside the Stitchers Club, where we do dive into the different stitches that you can use, the canvas embroidery stitches, the techniques that you can use to embellish canvases, and that sort of stuff. So.
And is that something that people can sign up for at any time? How does that work?
Well, actually, no. We have right now. We're getting ready to do a workshop toward the end of January, and I've got the dates. January 24th is when that starts. So I'll be sharing more information about that on my website and through social media, but y'all are the very first to find out the date.
Love you heard
So
it.
it's kind of like, yeah, it's like
24th. Okay, so tell us what's happening.
so what I'll be doing is I'll actually be teaching the steps that I go through in order to create a stitch guide, and we'll be issuing a challenge to folks to write a stitch guide in a week. So for a simple canvas. So yeah, so it'll be the Needlepoint Stitch Guide Challenge is going to be happening January 24th through the 28th. And after that, people will have the opportunity, if they'd like to join the Stitchers Club. So
okay, so the 24th to the 28th is just something anyone can participate in. It's not a fee for service. It's just a join us along, hear some free education, and see what you can do with it.
Absolutely. It's a fun way to, if you've always wanted to try your hand at writing a stitch guide, it's a great introductory opportunity to do that. And so I'm just, you know, I'm really looking forward to it. We've done this in the past and it's been tremendously successful. People have really enjoyed it. And so, you know, I'm really looking forward to doing that too.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. Are those emails you're sending out, or those videos you're posting on your Facebook page? Like, how's that happening? Or
yeah, so it'll be a combination. We'll have a place for people to sign up so that we don't just, you know, bombard everybody with stuff that they may not be interested in. So we'll have a place for people to actually sign up, and there will be combination of live teaching as well as some pre-recorded teaching. So it'll be a mix, so that
very generous of you.
Oh, well, listen, that's one of the things that is part of, you know, again, I mentioned earlier, I think it's so important that we as stitchers share or pay it forward. I feel so very fortunate that my grandmothers were so generous with their time and talent with me, that it's only fair for me to do the same with other people. So I've been very, very fortunate in my life to be able to do what I love for my vocation. And I just, you know, that's just part of what Serendipity Needleworks is all about, is sharing and making sure that needlework as a hobby continues to thrive. So
well, and that's fabulous. And that's really why we're here too, as far as the podcast goes, because as people have watched us over time, every 2 or 3 weeks we interview a designer or an industry professional like yourself, But then Megan and I get together and just chat about all things needlepoint and try to educate people in different ways. Like we just did a bunch of things on finishing and different ways you can finish things. And, so there's so many different things you need to learn in this industry that make it more rich and more enjoyable and give you more purpose in it. So, we're all kind of playing our own little part. And
For sure. And listen, we couldn't do it without the shops. That's one thing having been a shop owner, I understand fully all the things that go along with having a brick and mortar store. And, I can't, I know that it's online it seems to be the way things are moving, but something that I just can't stress enough to people is to please, please, please support your local brick and mortar stores, because there's nothing like being able to walk into a real shop and see things and touch things. And, if we don't have our local brick and mortar stores to be able to help us, then we will truly be at a disadvantage, because what we do is such a visual and tactile thing that even if you live in a place where, where there's not a local shop, see if you can find a shop that does participate in mail order like you and Megan both do. Because I've had so many of my followers who have really embraced working. I know with you specifically, Melissa, and I'm sure they have with Megan as well. But we have so many people who are just, they love working with you. They love your store, and I know it's because you are so kind and generous in helping them with what they're trying to achieve with their projects. So
we gotta all have our escape, that's for sure. So, well, and that's how you and I first, actually, that's not how you and I first met. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but you used to mail stuff to me when you owned a brick and mortar shop. And I don't know if you realized that.
I do remember that, actually.
I wasn't sure if you did. Because that was before I owned this shop. And so occasionally you'd be doing some fabulous like kit, or have access to books that my local shop didn't have or whatever. So and then when you were so gracious to share a number of us shops with your followers in March, April, May, I think, that time window when everyone was in lockdown. And that was just like, you're just a leader in this industry, in my opinion. So I really, really
thank you. Well, I do consider it a privilege to be able to do what I do. And so I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to share my love of needlework with your watchers. And I thank you for the opportunity. So
well, and I've sent a few people your way, and one of them, Sabrina Smith. I don't know if you know.
Yes, Sabrina is one of our members. Yes.
So, yeah, she texted me I don't know, maybe a couple weeks after she joined, and she's like, the gals all just found out that you're my local needlepoint shop, and they're all so jealous of me. So I thought that was really cute.
That is cute. She's a sweetheart. I love her.
She's a doll. She's a doll. And she works full time, and this is definitely her stress relief. And she was a knitter for years and years and years, and really just picked up needlepoint, I want to say maybe shortly before the shutdown started. So maybe beginning of 2019. Okay. So anyways, she has not had a chance to have many in-store. I don't know if she's had any in-store lessons because of the timing when she started needlepoint. So you doing what you do and enabling people to learn at a distance is just a godsend right now, because this is what people are looking for. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's truly a joy to be able to do it. And I too look forward to the day when we can all get together again in person. We actually had a retreat in 2019 in person here in Tuscaloosa, and then had another one scheduled for June of last year, but we had to pivot that to an online retreat, which was really fun. We had a great time, but I do look forward to the time when we can all get together in person again too.
Good. Okay, so if people, they can go to your website and sign up for your emails, I presume. And if they want to get involved in your Stitch Guide Writing Challenge, which this is truly, you heard it here first, because Ellen didn't tell me this ahead of time. So I think that's super exciting. So how do they make sure they get information on that?
I would just say the best thing to do is to go to serendipityneedleworks.com, which is our website. And there is a place there actually on the home page, there's a place in the right sidebar that you can sign up for our weekly emails. And we also have lots of blog posts there that you can go through and read. And across the top, the navigation bar, there is a place that says connect. So you can also, if you click on that, it will give you a place to sign up for the weekly emails as well. And I just encourage you to follow me on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook too. So.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to go sign up for emails because I follow you on the social media platforms, but I don't think I get your emails. So I think that'll be fun.
Well, and so truthfully too, one other thing that I failed to mention is that every Tuesday we have a new episode of Needlepoint TV, which is over on YouTube. This is relatively new. I did Needlepoint TV towards the end of the year last year, and then decided to make the pivot to do things pre-recorded. So the pre-recorded episodes of Needlepoint TV go live on Tuesdays over on our YouTube channel. So there's another place to follow along with us. And I do a bi-monthly column for Needlepoint Now magazine.
Oh, I meant to bring that up. I had that on my notes, but I forgot to ask.
So I do Stitching with Confidence is the name of that column, and it comes out in each issue, which is bi-monthly. So I have another one coming out in, what is this? Well, everybody should be getting, it should be landing in their mailboxes, just any day now. So yeah.
Well, so then all of our followers on YouTube for Pointing It Out, when they've binge watched all of us, they can go over and binge watch your Needlepoint TV.
Absolutely.
And they'll have a weekend activity and a midweek activity. So it's perfect.
There you go. We'll keep them entertained.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ellen. It was really great spending time with you, and I hope I get to see you in real life at some market sometime soon.
I do too. I look forward to that. Just give you a great big hug.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, my dear. For those of you who are just watching, go on to YouTube and subscribe to Needlepoint TV, I think, with Ellen, and make sure you subscribe to Pointing It Out podcast, because that helps us at least cover our costs for doing the things that we do. So we appreciate it. Okay, thanks. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.